tonight.
Sounds. We call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have the Statement of Open Public Meetings Act, please?
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting of the Planning Board and Historic Preservation Commission was provided by transmitting a copy of the meeting notice to the Madison Eagle and the Morris County Daily Record, posting a copy on the bulletin board at the main entrance of Borough Hall, and filing a copy in the office of the clerk, all on December 1st, 2017. Copies of said notice were made available to members of the general public.
A roll call for the Planning Board.
Mayor Conley.
Here.
Ms. Bailey. Here. Mr. Tom Hopkins.
Here.
Ms. Ehrlich.
Here.
Mr. Fleming.
Here.
Mr. Forte.
Here.
Ms. Huber.
She's not here.
Okay. Mr. Lewis.
Here.
And Mr. Limbaugh.
Here.
And roll call for Historic Preservation Commission.
Ms. Lanahan. Yes. Ms. Foster. Sorry. Here. Jessing. Mr. Kellogg.
Here.
Mr. Huber.
Here.
Mr. Solo.
Here.
And Mr. Toth.
And also, this was an advertised meeting for the mayor and council. Oscar Bailey and I sit up here as members of the planning board. In the audience, we have Ben Wolkowitz. Carmela Vitale, I believe, is here, but not up front. Okay. And Maureen Byrne, they bought the cheaper seats further back. And Pat Rowe is not here today. Just to let you know the process today, we do have more chairs coming up here, so for those who are standing, hopefully we'll find chairs for you shortly. If we should happen to exceed the fire limit at any point, which we probably won't, we will have to do a 15-minute adjournment and we will move across the street, but we've got our fingers crossed that we'll be okay. This is a concept review, and it's a optional process in the land use and planning. In fact, it's a process that can't be used if it's a formal application is in. Once a formal application is in, you cannot have an informal concept review. So there is not going to be any formal action tonight. You're not going to see any votes, but you're going to see a presentation from the owners of the property and the professionals. You'll hear some feedback from the Planning Board and the Historic Preservation Commission, and there'll be time for comments from the public at the end. The council members are here primarily just as sponges, and they will not be coming up and commenting, and that means they're absorbing, just in case there's any question on that. And a reminder, just like many issues that fill a room, there is always what comes in with lots of people, comes in lots of passion. And the passion comes on both sides. And especially this time of season, we have lots of passion for many things. And we also, this time of year, have lots of respect for everyone. So as we get through the process, don't forget about keeping your passion at check and showing your respect at all times. If you hear something you don't like, use your face to express your feelings, but not your voice or even by applause, because at times, if you applaud for one person and not the next, you have made a negative statement in that way. So please hold that and be open to all comments. Again, no formal action will be taken tonight. And when we get to the public part, we will be holding everyone to a 3-minute limit. Council meetings, we do a 3-minute and 1-minute grace, but with the size of the meeting today and the fact this is concept review, we will stick with a strict 3 minutes. It is at that time that if you have questions, you may incorporate those questions into your comments. We will answer those questions after you finish your comment time. But unlike a planning board hearing or a zoning board hearing where you ask questions after a professional presents, that does not happen tonight because, again, this is an informal process. It's more of giving the property owner feedback prior to them finalizing their plans and putting in their formal application. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to Peter Wolfson and Saxon. Welcome, Peter.
Mr. Mayor,
Planning Board members, Historic Preservation Commission members, Peter Wolfson of Day Pitney here on behalf of Saxon Real Estate. May I be seated?
Yes.
So with me here tonight is Anthony Rinaldi, who is the managing principal of Saxon Real Estate, owners of the property, and Jeff Gertler, who is the project architect. Anthony is going to make some brief remarks about Saxon's experience and qualifications in undertaking this project. And Jeff, who's a longtime Madison resident, will walk us through the slides that will be projected over on that wall, showing conceptual elevations, floor plans, and exhibits demonstrating the appropriateness of the size of the proposed building to be developed and of the design. This, of course, as you all know, is a unique location in Madison, located directly across from the train station. The project is the epitome of a transit-oriented mixed-use development. It proposes 20 market-rate residential units and 4 affordable residential units. It also will feature 2 retail units, which will front on Lincoln Place. And finally, in recognition of the concern over the recent closing by the operator of the movie theater, the plan contains space for 2 movie theaters that are sized with the intention to maximize the chances of attracting an operator. Before I turn it over to Anthony for his remarks, I'd just like to offer a few observations. First, on the movie theater. Traditional movie theaters are a dying breed. This is a reality of our times, and the changes in consumption of content that is indisputable. Bowtie, the operator of this theater, decided to close the Madison movie theater, not Saxon. The attendance figures that were reported for the Madison Theater near the end of its run were, not surprisingly, extremely low, in the teens oftentimes. Bowtie has also closed downtown theaters in Summit and Montclair. Saxon has had discussions with movie theater operators, and so far, none have put forth a workable proposal to operate here. Despite the undeniable trend of movie theater closures, Saxon has laid out space for 2 theaters in its design, as you'll see when Jeff presents. Saxon is sensitive to the sentimental importance that the theater holds for some Madison residents and will continue to explore ways to make it work. On the building itself, the building has been evaluated by 2 separate engineering firms who have concluded that it has significant structural issues, and my client has been advised against attempting to have it renovated. In addition to the significant structural issues, the building contains asbestos. The building, even if it could be renovated, is obsolete for any practical reuse. The building has no individualized historic importance. This is not to say that it does not have sentimental importance to some residents, and we do acknowledge it's located in the historic district. The project architect, Jeff Gertler, who in the past has sat on the planning board and both the historic and environmental commissions, has designed this consistent with the guidelines that are contained within your code, and with a respect for the character of downtown Madison. The new building design will incorporate many of the physical features of the shuttered theater and is consistent with those guidelines for the historic district. Finally, on affordable housing, the borough, as most of you know, has filed a declaratory judgment, as most municipalities have, that will result in a fair share plan as to how it will meet its constitutional obligation to provide feasible opportunities for the creation of affordable housing. The ultimate number of affordable units that the borough is responsible for in terms of enabling will ultimately be determined by a settlement or by a judge following a trial. This project will provide 4 affordable housing units in accordance with Madison's ordinances and state law. As the residential units are rentals, the project may entitle the borough to reap a bonus against its obligation for affordable units. Developers of projects which will incorporate affordable units are, by the law, entitled to density bonuses, The plan, as it is currently configured, does not seek such a bonus. With that, I'd just like to introduce Anthony and have him make some opening remarks.
Mr. Wilson, I think even though we're in a conceptual setting with the joint boards meeting to hear this case, the testimony offered on the part of the applicant, I believe, should be under oath. As far as marking exhibits, I see you have a video presentation, so we'll see how that goes if it's important to mark exhibits separately. Would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Gentlemen, Mr. Rinaldi and Mr. Gertler, would you raise your right hands, please? Do you swear that the testimony you give to this hearing and any exhibits or evidence you offer to the board, the combined boards, will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Peter. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Rinaldi. I am the founder and managing principal of Saxon Real Estate. Just want to start off by thanking everyone for coming out tonight, Planning Board, HPC, Mayor, Council, the other municipal officials, as well as all the folks and residents here. We know it's a busy time of the year, so spending a couple hours with us talking about this project is much appreciated. So before I turn it over to Jeff, I'll give you guys a brief background on Saxum. Saxum's a company I started 4 years ago. Really with, I was a kid with no dollars and a big dream, and that dream carries on today. Our main goal has always been to help revitalize and reposition assets in transit-oriented, affluent downtown communities in and around New York City, but really here in New Jersey. Our team's made up of Jersey boys and girls. These are the markets that we kind of live, work, and play in. So we have a great deal of connectivity and importance placed on these markets. We kind of pride ourselves on repositioning and renovating assets that are often dilapidated, underutilized, or mismanaged. We've seen a great renaissance going on in these downtown communities across the state, and we aim to help further that. Behind us, we, as part of this investment, is a $75 million fund capitalization that we launched this past year. We've got about a dozen projects in and around New Jersey in similar downtowns to this. I'll say, I know there's a lot of sensitivities to this, and we are sensitive to not only the historic component, but the residents and the municipal feelings towards the movie theater. A lot of the projects we have actually are, in fact, historic buildings that have significant amount of historical, significant amount of architectural importance. Buildings are well over 100 years old, and when they're structurally sound, we do everything we can to revitalize those, investing a great deal of time and money to reposition those buildings in Montclair, Ridgewood, Summit, Summit, Red Bank. You can look on our website and see some of these projects that we've done. In addition to that, this community does mean a great deal to myself and as well as our team. Besides this investment, our family business is here in town, which many of you know. My mother-in-law lives on Main Street. My father-in-law lives right up the road. We live in the town next door. Our investors, partners, friends all live in this community, so it means a great deal to us. As Peter mentioned, we have heard the outcry of many of the folks in this town about losing the theater, and we understand that and are sensitive to it. We've spent a lot of time, money, and effort into coming up with a plan that we think addresses those needs and includes a theater. And we hope, everyone here tonight can kind of appreciate the effort we've put in thus far. So, I'll turn it over to Jeff, and then, we'll happy to take questions. So just want to say thanks again.
Just 1 second, Jeff. Are there any empty seats out in the audience? I know we have some people out in the hallway. We have a couple empty seats. We've got one over there. We've got up front here. We've got one second row, so if we can move a few people in from the outside so everyone can, if we can get as many people in here as possible. Want to try to avoid having to adjourn and move across. Yep. Yeah, we got a seat up in the front row. Sorry. We'll try to get some more chairs up here. Jeff, do we want to tone down the lights a little bit for you?
Yes, I figured this out. Mood lighting tonight. Everybody okay with this? Everybody's good? Okay. Mayor, Chairperson Tomblakian, Chairwomen Foster and Lenahan, HPC members, Planning Board members, Town Council members, and of course, members of Madison. Thank you for all coming out tonight. Is it not on right now? Okay, I'll just talk closer. Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great opportunity for us to present the design for a new building. We appreciate your time tonight as well. It is odd for me to be on this side of the table. I've been on that side of the table for over a dozen years, and I've heard dozens of applications. It's now my turn to be on this side, and the fortunate part about that is that having been on that side of the table for the Planning Board, HPC, and Environmental Commission, I've learned a great deal about Madison. I've learned about its history, I've learned about its buildings, I've learned about its infrastructure, and most of all, I've learned about the spirit of Madison. So I think of all the people that should be designing a building in downtown Madison, I'm really grateful that it's me, and I know it's a little bit difficult because of the movie theater and what it holds to many people. We're going to do a terrific job trying to create a new building and invigorate downtown Madison. Still? Okay, I just have to hold it even closer. Okay, I have to hold it really close. All right, thank you. Sorry if I'm going to be in your way. All right, we'll see. First slide is just the site. We're familiar where the movie theater is on Lincoln Place across from the train station. And the next slide is interesting because when you look at this building, I think most people don't realize that the movie theater is probably the biggest building in downtown Madison, except for the Hartley Dodge Memorial. I think if you look around on Google Maps, you'd be surprised that it overshadows almost every building here. I think most people wouldn't have realized that. When we look at the next slide, we look at other buildings in downtown Madison that are at least 3 stories or 4 stories, whose buildings are at least 40 feet high. The site that we're looking at, of course, this is the movie theater. It's 42 feet high at its top of its gable roof. So, in fact, when you see other buildings of 50 feet, 40, 40, 47, 53, 39, 53, the 42-foot movie theater is actually just about the same height as most of the other buildings. So you'll see what we'll be proposing later is not unusual to actually what's already downtown. When we looked at designing a new building, we of course tried to look at where will the principal views be in looking at the building going forward. Obviously, on Lincoln Place, looking east and west, are the 2 locations that are the obvious ones. But also what's obvious is the train station. Thousands of people every day will be getting off and looking at the building. But also we have sites from Prospect Street looking sort of through the Nautilus Diner parking lot, and also from Main Street. It's an interesting view from there as well, over that sort of parking garage or parking lot through Main Street. So this slide, it's really a contextual view of what it looks like on Main Street, on Lincoln Place, looking east. What we see immediately on our left is 4 Lincoln Place, which is an older 3-story building, mixed-use building, retail on the ground floors and residential on top. And we've purposely put in, obviously, these white dashed lines showing what that building looks like, its height, in comparison to what our proposed building would look like on Lincoln Place. You can see that the heights of the existing building, because of how we're setting back the building, really would demonstrate that our building is not higher than 4 Lincoln Place, optically speaking, though it might be in actual numbers. And when you look in the other direction, looking towards the west, what we see is really interesting. We highlighted the train station building because the trees mask it somewhat. But you could see the train station building, which is our neighbor directly across the street, whose 2 principal dimensions to focus on is this eave between the gabled roof and the front face of the building is 37 feet high off of the sidewalk. Our proposed building to the top of the 3rd floor before the setback is actually only 34 feet. So it's lower than the train station building at that intersection. The top of the train station is 49 feet off of the sidewalk. Our building will be 47.5 feet to the top of the parapet. So when you're comparing the 2 buildings, our building will be lower in height than the building across the street, and basically fitting in with the three major buildings on Lincoln Place in terms of height. We did a comparison of the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm blocking you on occasion. Yeah, we did a comparison of the larger buildings in downtown Madison and compared them against our building. So we did this, these are all to scale, and we looked at the buildings and said, are we higher? Are we lower? In fact, we are just about on the money with every building. So clearly our building would not look different than what's already in the majority of these larger buildings downtown. If you were to look between Kings Road and then down to Main Street, you would connect the dots by starting at Hartley Dodge. And you could connect a diagonal line that goes right through to Main Street to the British Prime Emporium building. And you can see the existing movie theater right now. Basically, it just is slightly over the line that connects the top of the train station building to the British Pine Emporium building. So when we looked at our new building, we didn't want to really go beyond that. But we wound up going about 1 foot, 10 inches above the highest point of the existing movie theater. So you could see a very slight orange line that just creases just above the existing gable. We're adding a little bit in the front, but we do have a setback. And we're removing, actually, from the back of the building, the height as well. So that basic line that connects Hartley Dodge to Main Street, we're still not violating that line. The view from Main Street, which probably no one really looks at very much, because when you look through this garage and parking garage, you don't even realize that that's the back of the movie theater. It's a very nondescript theater or nondescript building. It adds nothing to Main Street, and yet you actually see it there. And what we're adding to the building, as you can see by the additional red lines, is we're only really adding these little pieces, filling in these sort of trapezoidals or triangles in these corners. We're actually removing and slicing off a piece of the building on its eastern side, and we're adding a little bit on the western side. So basically what you'll be seeing from Main Street is now an invigorated site. You'll see a new back of the building, which I'll show you some images later. But you're not seeing a large building facing you from Main Street. Next slide. This is a slightly more technical slide, so I won't spend too much time on it. But suffice to say two things that are important. The building has a height of 44 feet off of the sidewalk. In Madison, and the ordinances, we've been with Susan and Frank on this many, many times, what's called an average grade plane that basically suggests or says that if you were to imagine a site that has contours at a certain angle from front to back, there's a point that's an average that the building has that we call the average grade plane. And you can see on this side of Lincoln Place, the average grade plane is below the sidewalk level, but on this side of Lincoln Place, the average grade plane is actually higher. There's more people coming, it looks like.
Take a deep breath for a second, Jeff, while we get these chairs in. And we've got some seats up front here. This will give you a chance to see the... It's also been pointed out we have some signs, and to keep with the spirit of the meeting and all that, please keep the signs outside the room. You can certainly show them off as people come in and out, but keep the signs outside the room. Thank you.
All set? Okay. So at that critical point of average grade plane, which is the most technical thing to be interrupted on, but this is the important thing to know about it, is that the average grade plane, the average grade plane would suggest on a street like Lincoln Place that if you were on the higher side of the street, your building could be elevated by that much, higher than, let's say, 45 feet, which is the ordinance. If you're on the downhill side of Lincoln Place, you would be reduced by that much. So the effect of this is that one side of the street would have roughly a 10-foot higher building than the other side of the street. I think we would recognize that in urban planning, you wouldn't design a city or a town to have two unequal sized buildings, one higher on one side of the street and one lower on the other side of the street. The other thing to recognize about this building, which is unique and we really would like to take the advantage of this, is that we've seen so many applications where the developer says they're unable to put parking underneath the building. Well, lo and behold, this is probably the only site in Madison's downtown that we can easily park underneath the building and have retail spaces on the ground floor and a movie theater on the ground floor with residential above. So the natural contour of going from Lincoln Place down to the back of the building and then parking underneath, allowing an entirely retail and movie theater first floor, is an opportunity that we want to take advantage of. Okay, next slide. The floor plans are pretty straightforward. On the ground floor, we talked about 2 retail stores in the front, each a little more than 2,000 square feet. And behind that, there's an entrance to the residential. Here's the residential lobby in this portion of the building. And everything beyond this point, other than the entrance to the residential lobby, are the 2 theaters and the theater lobby as well. Each theater, one would be about 40 seats we project. The other would be about 42 seats. We're imagining that an operator would use the sort of modern seating configuration, larger seats, a raked floor, and the way the Morristown movie theater would be in that light. Of course, the parking, two-way parking would be on the eastern side of the building coming down, and then you'll see later into the parking below. And on the western side would be a walkway to the residential lobby and to the theater lobby itself. The parking that I talked about is down below. We're providing 24 parking spots, 1 for each residential unit. We are providing, of course, mechanical, storage, bicycle room, and the ancillary rooms that are required for a building like this. We're also providing the backyard dumpster area for refuse disposal as well. On the second and third floors, we're providing 9 units on each floor, and on the 4th floor, we're providing 6 units on that floor. The 2 units in the front and back have some private terraces because that's where the 2 setbacks are. And then on the top would be amenity space for all the tenants in the building, as well as mechanical space that would house all of the mechanical equipment for the building so you wouldn't be seeing it from Lincoln Place or Main Street or from the Nautilus parking lot either. Next slide. Okay, so now we finally get to some images of the building that maybe some of you have seen, maybe not all of you have seen it yet, though. I do have to hold this close, don't I? Well, okay, sorry. Well, I think the most important takeaway when you look at this building is that you take a look at it in relationship to its neighbors on the street. There are 2 significant neighbors on the street that are at least of some size, which would be the train station, of course, and 4 Lincoln Place also. Both buildings are basically of comparable height. Our attempt in designing this building was to not overpower those buildings. We didn't think it was appropriate to try and match the height of, Romanelli's or the hairdressing salon. It's a 1-story building. The post office is actually a pretty handsome 2-story plus building, but it's a real true civic formal building that we're not trying to sort of emulate in any sort of way. But it's really respecting what's on the street, which is what we've done. And you could see these 3 buildings sort of speaking the same language together in terms of height and bulk and size. The other thing to take away from this is the coloration of the stone and the brick in this building. I think we know that the predominant color of brick in Madison is probably a reddish tone. Many buildings have reddish tones, lighter or darker, but they're in the reddish family. So we chose to make the floors 1 through 3 in that reddish tone of brick. It actually matches somewhat the brick of 4 Lincoln Place. It matches a dozen other buildings in downtown Madison also. We also chose to take a brick on the top, on the fourth floor, which is more of a limestone grayish color, and that color is found both in the post office, it's also found in the train station as well, and found in several other buildings in downtown. So we used the sort of predominant materials found in downtown Madison. We put them on this building and thought that what even works better yet is that having a lighter tone brick on the top of this building, it sort of lightens the top of the building, it makes it a little smaller, it makes it fade away a little bit. It actually blends in with clouds, with gray skies. So it does give the building a slightly smaller appearance as a result of the lighter color on the top floor. The building from the front tells a slightly different story. I think you know that Madison is a transit community. Thousands of people are coming in and out of Madison every day. And when they come into Madison, what do they see when they're coming in from the New York side? They see the roof of the dog kennel. They see the side of Weichert Realty and the roof of that. They see the roof of Romanelli's and the consignment shop. And they see the top of the movie theater. They don't see a lot. It's really not what you would call the gateway to Madison. On the left side, you at least have Hartley Dodge when you're looking far enough to the left. But if you're on the right side of the train, which I come in every night, half the time on the right side, all I see is the roofs of these buildings. But when you come in, you see this building, the train station is 23 feet above the sidewalk. So you are at this elevation on the building. So now you're coming into Madison and you're seeing a building that has presence, and there's a statement, this is Madison. It's not just the roof and the air conditioning equipment of other buildings.
Quiet the audience, please.
I think what you also see in this building are the windows for the retail, and that's really critical. I'll tell you why. If you think of the James Building, you think of really there are about 14-foot high glass windows. When you think of the British Pine Emporium, there are about 12-foot high glass windows. Many buildings in town have fairly high windows, but not as high as those buildings. And what do those buildings do differently than most other buildings in town? I think we've all walked down the street many, many times. Those buildings, when the lights are on and there's a nice display in British Pine Emporium, you can't help but look inside. You want to walk on that side of the street. You want to engage with that store and what's inside of it. That's what we want to do on this building. We want this building to engage with the street and engage with the people. So we do that through these large windows. But it's not just the large windows. We do that with a series of, let's say, columns and deeply set-in windows. A lot of the residential buildings in downtown Madison, you see a flat wall of brick and little punch-out windows. Not very engaging. When you have some deep recesses, you could also have some balconies that we have, so people could be on the street. I mean, on the balcony and engage with people actually on the street. We're sort of pulling the street into the building and pulling the building onto the street to have more energy on the street as well. We also have a canopy out front, and that canopy is a place where people might want to walk underneath with inclement weather. When they want to walk on the side of the street, looking in to see the beautiful shops under a canopy, it's just part of urban planning. It's sort of making the fabric of this street come alive. Right now, the street is, I won't say dead, but it's very quiet, and we want to enliven the street. Next. Oh, go back for a minute. You know what else I want to show you? I want to show you also this plaque in the top. From the existing movie theater, there is a plaque, and it says Lions Madison Theater, 1925. We want to take that plaque and put it onto this building right dead center, form our own new pediment, and place it up there. And we also want to put a new bronze plaque under that number 14. No one really knows much about this building. We talk about it maybe in the last few weeks, but beyond the brief conversation, there's no history. But if there were a plaque there, like if it were a historical building of some consequence, you'd have something about its history, of the builders, of the year, of materials, of people who founded it. We could put that on there, so at least the history of the building can be read and seen and saved going forward. Now let's go. Thank you. On the western side of the building, we have the entrance. Well, the part of the entrance that dominates the western side of the building is going to be the sign for either the Lions Theater, Madison Theater, whatever name it becomes. But the point is, what this element is, it's 5 feet wide, it's about 13 feet high, and it's lit. So if you were thinking that you had a movie marquee, and that movie marquee might be 5 feet high and 13 feet wide, we're taking that movie marquee, we're just turning it on its side. And we're putting that movie marquee at the location where the entrance to the movie is. We're also, before you get to that, we're also invigorating this whole path down to that theater. First, what I didn't mention before is that all of the retail stores, they have windows on the sides. So many stores that you see on Main Street, there'll be windows in the front, and you don't know that there's anything in the store until you get there, and then you look to your right or to your left. But if there are windows on the side of the building, and we have an opportunity because the post office is set back and we have a driveway on the other side, you could then have more retail windows perpendicular to the street. So there's more visibility, more energy as well. And then past that retail store, we have a series of metal and wood planes. And these wood planes and metal planes are separated by just about 1.5 inches, allowing a little LED light, a crease of light that would graze the metal and graze the wood. And why are we doing that? Because this is a theater, and you want some theatrics. You want something magical happening to get back to that theater. There's a long canopy from front to back, so if in inclement weather, you're protected going the whole way back. And we have signage for the theater in the front, as well as, of course, signage for the residential component and the theater in the back as well. The back of the building is really interesting in what that sort of evokes in some ways. It didn't really occur to me when we first began designing the building how unique this site is. So, we talk about buildings like the James Building or Museum of Early Trades, and these buildings, as beautiful as they are, the James Building really only has 2 facades, right? Green Avenue and Main Street. The back of the James Building, you don't even know what it looks like. It's sort of, I think it's painted brick, it's dark, it's not particularly interesting looking. The Museum of Early Trades, also, it's basically a 2-sided building. You don't really know the southern side or the complete western side of that building either. The YMCA building, the original YMCA building, beautiful articulated building. I don't think anybody knows what the back of that building looks like. It's only a 1-sided building. What does this building have that's different than all those other beautiful buildings? This has 4 sides that we have to pay attention to. It's not a 1-sided or 2-sided building. Every side is special. And beyond that, the other unique thing, which is certainly different than every other building in Madison, is that there's a 12-foot difference between Lincoln Place and the back of the building. So you view the building from here, and from 23 feet up. So 23 and 12, 35 feet. How many buildings in Madison do you get to view from a difference of 35 feet standing? Your eye changes its elevation. And 4-sided the building. It really is one of the few sculptural buildings that we're going to be able to create in Madison. So because of that, even from eating breakfast at the Nautilus Diner, you park your car and you look towards the back of the theater now, which is a very nondescript back, as you could recall it. We treated this in a series of horizontal layers. The first layer is basically just concrete on the bottom to protect the building from snow, from salt, from snow removal. But then the very next layer, which is really inside of it, of course, are the cars for parking. We have the brick that's just one width of brick, and there are gaps in the brick so air could move through the cellar of the building into to the outside of the building. But right in front of the brick is a series of planted ivy in these ivy boxes that crawl up the side of the building. And there would be stainless steel cables that connect from the box up to the underside of the building. And the ivy, as we know, it's going to naturally grow as high as it can. It'll probably jump above this lip and continue up to the side of the building as only ivy can do. Above that, we have this 14-foot floor-to-ceiling height, or floor-to-floor height on the first floor. So you have 13 feet of brick over here. We thought we would actually divide that into 2 courses, basically. The top third is a a brick pattern that's going to create a certain shadow effect of recesses in the brick. And the next, those are 2/3 of that portion of the brick, is a series of what we were taking, bless you, sort of this roll-lock coursing of brick from the front of the building. We're using the same detail and creating little openings in here as if they were windows. Rather than having a brick of 20 feet and then a column, 20 feet and a column, we're breaking up that 20 feet of brick into a few different patterns of brick. Above that, of course, we have the 2 or 3 floors of residential above that. And what I think it's also important to note about this slide is that the building is set back in the back 12 feet. It's set back on the front 12 feet. It's set back on each side by 3 feet. So we talked about how do you sort of design a building in Madison, and how do you design a building anywhere? But you look for those maybe sort of common design images that might be helpful in giving you some impetus to how you might design something. What we found in Madison was really common in some of the taller buildings is that at about the 3/4 mark, there very often is a line that separates the roof from the balance of the building. And that happens sort of almost consistently with the taller buildings. There's a change of material, there's a change of angle. The texture of the building changes at that mark. So what we did with our building was that we really did the same thing. At that 3/4 mark, we chose to set back the building, we changed the material of the building, and the texture changes. It goes from, obviously, this sort of building with very pronounced columns to more of a flat building that tends to fade away more as well. The old YMCA building was a great inspiration to look at, because what we recognized in this building was that there's a series of, obviously, very large windows, and they're double height windows, and they have a series of windows above the double height windows, and then, of course, the parapet above that. So when we looked at our building, we thought we were sort of in some way emulating that kind of spirit of sort of largeness, I guess, having, of course, the larger windows on the bottom that we talked about already, but then basically that sort of second and third floor window, the same way the YMCA building had it, a series of a different pattern of windows above that, which is on our 4th story. So we're using some precedents from buildings in Madison. We probably have all seen buildings in Madison with very interesting pediments on top. Some of the pediments, they designate the building and the year they were built. Some are just decorative, and that's all they are. What we want to do, and I pointed this out on the other slide, is that we want to take the plaque and create our own new pediment in keeping with the new building. Large windows. So I'll talk about this just quickly again. 14 feet high windows, 12 foot high windows, British Home Emporium. Large windows also. Not unique. It really is almost looking at what is successful in Madison and wanting to reuse that for the new building. A lot of buildings on Main Street, you probably have seen this, it's a pretty sort of sweet touch. They put little transom windows on top of the larger retail windows. It adds another texture to the building, another scale to the building. We're doing the same thing on our large windows on the 1st floor. We're adding those transom windows on top. It breaks down the scale of the taller windows and gives a little bit, just a better scale to the whole ground level. I'm sure you've all noticed the amazing ivy that grows on the back of the train station on the walls. It's quite beautiful. And we really are looking to do the same things I pointed out on the lower part of our building. So this is our neighbor right across the street. We're going to do the same thing on our building over here. And lastly, the British Pine Emporium. This is an interesting thing I didn't notice until recently, having breakfast there. But, the side wall of that building, it's the drive-through, as you probably all know. And in the drive-through, there's a bunch of series of cutouts. And these cutouts are there, I think, to provide some light, but also to break up the long row of brick along this, must be 100-plus feet, the building. So these kinds of cutouts, we're sort of using, you can see them, I hope you can all see them, those same kind of cutouts. In this case, we're not cutting out the building, but we're just using the Roloc brick detailing to create what looks like a window pattern through there, just to break up the brick itself. So the movie theater building itself is a building that it's hard to say what the style is. I don't know that anyone could call it something other than vernacular architecture, meaning it's much of an infill building more than anything else. It doesn't really speak to some Gothic revival or Victorian. It's a collage of styles. And however, we found some things on the building that we thought would be interesting to at least use as possible inspiration, or how could we incorporate that into our new building. So what we did was we looked at certain things. Obviously, we talked about the plaque and the pediment, obviously. The building has a series of columns. Its columns are not always regular, but they are a series of columns that presume it could have been almost more regular, but for whatever reason, they chose not to do that. There's also, on the canopy that exists now, there's a series of tie rods for the building, and the metal tie rods I'll show we're using that same style as well to hold up our canopy. I talked a little bit about the Roloc brick coursing around these details, and then just the running bond pattern inside of it. So I'll show you where we're using those on our building as well. And then there's the coping stone at the top of the building, at the parapets, the coping stone. We're using the same thing on our building on the 3rd floor and 4th floor parapets. And then lastly, the canopy itself. We'll show you where we're going to use that as well. So how we're incorporating those elements into this building, I know you might say, oh, it's a reach. But, architecture is not about copying something else. It's a matter of sometimes taking something and finding how you can incorporate it and reinvent it so that it becomes more interesting in your building. So what we did was, you can see obviously the plaque we talked about. For us, the columns were not columns that just sat there on the 1st floor, but we thought columns could be something that really defines what the building is. It's a pattern. You see this in classical architecture for the last 2,000-3,000 years. We're really using that same basic architectural vernacular of defining this building. The metal ties we're using to hold up our canopy to recall that same system in the movie theater building. The brick patterns that I talked to you about are found along the tops of the window openings as well as on the sides of the building as well. The coping stone, we're using the same kind of coping stone details on our building. The canopy, of course, we talked about. It's a different kind of canopy, but this canopy speaks to this building. It doesn't speak to our old movie theater building. And again, maybe I'm repeating myself. We're not trying to copy the movie theater. We're trying to take the spirit of some parts of it and figure how do we use that for a different building, for a different purpose, for what would be a building that would be better for Lincoln Place, in all honesty. And then the brick colors, we talked about the reddish and the grayish tones as well. Next slide. It's interesting that as uneventful of a building as the movie theater is in the back, if you catch it at the right time of day when the sun is sort of setting, it really creates a nice shadow line. All these sort of pilasters on the side of the building, much of which are sort of in a deteriorated state, it creates that same column rhythm that I talked about in the front of the building. And we're really using that, not because we're copying that, it's because what architects did for the last few thousand years, having a rhythm inside the building, both inside the building, which are actually these steel columns, as well as the outside pilasters, these columns. So, rhythm in architecture is one of the basic tenets of architecture, creating that, and we're really trying to do much the same thing. The movie theater itself, there's a few interesting objects there that we thought we could probably retain. Obviously, the ticket window itself, frankly, it's just a plywood painted enclosure, but it's interesting because it recalls a movie theater. There's also, you may have noticed, a really interesting marble deal plate, which is where you would pay your money and you'd take your change out. And over the years, that little groove gets bigger and bigger. I guess that's about 70 years old, so it's something we'd like to take with us to the new building. We also have the arched windows that we'd like to recall. We'll show you where we'll do that. And also this canopy, the inside of the canopy, not the outside, we thought was also interesting. So what we did was we thought that inside in the entrance to the movie theater, that we could basically recreate the Madison Theater inside by using the ticket booth, using the arched windows we'll recreate, and then taking that tin ceiling and recreating it if it doesn't come off easily, and putting that in the building as well, in the entrance. So if you're walking down on the west side of the building and you approach this sign, then you'll look through the windows and see, voila, there's the original movie theater with all the most important aspects of it inside the building that we're trying to retain. That concludes the presentation for this. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So what we'll do is, do you have Peter, you have someone else lined up?
We do not.
Okay, so we'll I'm just, for people that came in late, I'm just going to very quickly review the process here, and then we'll get to questions and comments from Planning Board. So this is an informal hearing, so again, no formal action is taken tonight. After the Planning Board asks questions and share some comments and feedback for the developers, we'll have the HPC. We are slightly microphone challenged, so we'll pass the wireless microphone over to the HPC when it comes to that time. And after the two boards have provided feedback for the developer, we will then entertain questions and comments from the audience. Again, as a concept review, Saxum Real Estate will take these comments and feedback back and then put together a formal application, and that is one of the more formal process, whether it's to the Planning Board or Zoning Board of Adjustment, depending on what the final design is or final use of the site. But as it sits right now, most likely Planning Board. So, Planning Board members, any questions or comments? Astrid.
You're asking for a couple of variances, correct?
As designed now, there would be a couple of bulk variances.
And
Yeah.
what would they be?
So there's height, because of the nature of the definition or formula under your ordinance, even though at the sidewalk we would meet the 45-foot maximum height, because of the slope conditions, the topography, that creates an average grade height elevation that would exceed the 45 feet. And then the ordinance also speaks about a maximum of 3 stories, and this is 4 stories.
And what about parking?
That would be a de minimis exception from the RSIS.
Okay. So
There's also a setback variance in the back, but we're actually improving the condition over that which exists now.
what would happen if you tried to conform to our ordinance? How would you deal with the building?
The project would probably be infeasible, and we would not have the ability to provide the affordable units that the borough would receive from this project.
The last story, how far setback is that compared to what the setback is on the existing building? Do you understand what I'm saying? Top
Yeah,
layer.
this is this still on? Yeah. This is set 12 feet back.
Uh-huh.
I did not measure the existing building, but I would guess it's probably a good 20 feet, maybe 25 feet.
What would happen if you tried to push your fourth story back even further so it wouldn't be such a massing in the front? Can you do that? Is that possible?
Well, you could do anything.
Yeah, I know.
Would you get? I
But is
think
it-
the answer. Let me answer this. I don't want to be cute about it, but architecture is often not a game like Mr. Potato Head. Let's do this. Let's move this. Let's add this. We could do all those things probably. As Peter said, though, we may lose the economics of the building because if you start losing too many units, which you'll lose probably a good 4 to 6 units.
If you move the top back?
Yeah, because you have to move it back beginning on the 3rd story and then on the 4th story. should be losing a good number of units.
Okay.
I don't, the goal of this was not to make it look like the movie theater. This is a new building. It's a building of its age, of it being contemporary, and the goal is to invigorate the downtown with a new building that has broader function to it, not to make it just like the old building. Sorry.
Understood, but I look at the buildings throughout town, particularly the old buildings, and I want to make sure this is compatible, and massing is a little bit different than what we have. Even though heights may be similar, we have 3 stories for the most part on the main street and Waverly Place, except for the one building on Waverly Place. So that's what I'm trying to get my head around, is whether this is actually compatible with.
So I would ask you, what is not contextual after showing you all the images of the other buildings? How does this not look like the other buildings in its massing?
I don't think that's a fair question to ask me, Jeff.
I think just, I think the best is just to take that feedback as it is right now. Right, yeah, that'll be the easiest thing. Just one thing I did forget to mention for those that did not have a good angle. Our goal is to have all these images. Some of the images are already on RoseNet. Our goal is to have all these images on RoseNet. Tomorrow, we're also recording the meeting, so you'll have as long as we're all speaking to the microphone, we'll have a recording of the meeting you'll be able to see. Any other, what we'll do, so I don't have to turn back and forth, we'll work our way down this way. Ostry, are you
I'm
good?
finished. Yeah, thanks.
George?
I understand it. I like a lot of it. I like the English ivy. Is there a sprinkler system to make sure the English ivy grows? Okay, irrigation system. Okay. That's all I have.
Oh, sorry.
Rachel?
Yes, there would be an irrigation system for the ivy.
Thank you for the illuminating presentation. It was very valuable to see how you pulled these different elements of the existing architecture of our downtown into your consideration for the design of the new building. And I think you've allowed us to see the downtown buildings in a light that, many of us don't consider in our day-to-day experience of walking down Main Street. So this is quite valuable. I also appreciate that you've incorporated a lot of these architectural elements into the new design. You've got some interesting brick details. The pediment certainly seems very typical of Madison. The brick tones are, I think, quite nice and appropriate. I think the main element that jumps out at people and at myself are the size of the windows, which you did a nice job of showing us that here in Madison we do have some grand windows. We have buildings with grand architectural gestures. The YMCA windows that are grouped into like a double height vertical grouping. The oversized windows on Main Street, the transoms. But generally, these are elements of civic and cultural buildings that comprise the fabric of Madison. Whereas the windows in the proposal here harken back to like an industrial or a factory style, which maybe is typical of Jersey City or Hoboken or other vibrant transit-oriented downtowns. But it feels a little bit out of place in Madison. We do have elements that are grand, but they're broken down with more of a human module, whether it's the divided lights of the windows or the windows are framed with a masonry detail. I think the large kind of blackened steel lights of the windows that have that factory window effect, while handsome and very contemporary and probably attractive to today's renters, they feel out of place. And I'm wondering if the design could take a closer look at the ways that windows are treated in our downtown and reconsider the scale of the openings and also the way that you divide the glazed portions of the building. Another thought on the windows is that these are large windows looking into people's living rooms and bedrooms right on the street. and directly across from the train station platform. I'm wondering if we won't typically be seeing the back of people's drapes because they'll feel somewhat exposed here on Lincoln. I looked straight across from the train station tonight when I arrived back from the city, and I thought, I'm not sure I'd want to be on display there, in my pajamas or whatever, to people coming home. So as lovely as the renderings are, they show lights and furniture and activity. I'm not sure if that's really the impression we would get when people come home for the day and pull the drapes shut. So I think toning down the fenestration and perhaps some more care given to the way that the windows are framed and divided would help the design feel more contextual.
Please hold the applause, and you can speak to the board members afterwards and give them a handshake. Thank you.
So Jeff, my comments were also going to be about the windows, and I'm not going to delay us by going into it again, but I would concur with my colleague here on the board. I would also add that I think the other element, and maybe this goes to what Austri was getting at as well, is the way the central I-beam, or what I'm going to call the central I-beam that's running kind of around the front facade and the side of the building plays with the windows. I think that's another element that you'd find in an urban design. I mean, I think it's probably more common than something we've seen here in Madison. The only building I can think of in Madison that really plays in the same way that this one does is the building across the parking lot from Chipotle. It's sort of the building where yeah, exactly, Astria Trevi. So I think it has similar windows, but I did have a question about the windows. You talked about the windows on the James Building and British Pine Emporium being 12 and 14 feet. How high are these on the ground floor? They're 12, and then
It's 12 feet.
12 feet, sorry.
and then how high are they on the subsequent floors?
Well, the floor to ceiling is 9 feet. So these are 8 feet.
Okay,
For that.
so they're 8 feet.
7 to 8 feet, sorry.
7 to 8 feet, and then what's the spacing between the windows on the second and third floors? So between the second and third floor, what's that space?
Are you speaking about in here?
Right there.
I think there's about 2 feet.
So you've got 16 feet with 3 feet, so you're at 19 feet ultimately. So I think that's probably some of the massing that we're feeling, when we're looking at this as well.
Jeff, I just really want to compliment you on doing something different. Doing something different because, in our downtown, there really aren't any two buildings that are lookalikes. Each building is unique. Each building is different. We have some standout buildings like the James Building or the old YMCA, the British Pine Emporium. But then a lot of buildings, tomorrow when you're out having breakfast on Mayo, you take a look at them. They're not all that great. But they work together in a really nice way. Even though the buildings may not be individually attractive, they work. So what I really like is that you're doing something different. You're doing something that's, I think, modern and contemporary. I think it's going to, the ultimate design across from like the kind of the classical trade station, it's going to be a nice change. And I think it's really going to liven up Lincoln Place. Because, the Romanelli's building, is there anything particularly pretty about it? No. 4 Lincoln, is that a gorgeous building? No. The post office is nice, but I think this is really going to be the centerpiece of the block. It's at the center of the block. It's probably one of the most prominent locations in the CBD. And to have something magnificent there is, I think, a great thing for the town. So I really look forward to seeing what your final product is going to be.
Jeff, nice presentation. I think that my colleagues have discussed the window issue and the massiveness of the windows. And I don't know exactly, in this particular design, what can be done about that. But I'm sure you're going to put your thinking hat on. The question that I really had on this, aside from the windows, was you depicted the. I'm interested in the lighting in the front. I see from the Lions Theater that there's lighting all the way down. Where's the lighting going to be, other than in the retail stores? Is there lighting coming down from the canopy? Or?
Yeah, there would be lighting on each of the columns. Throughout here, there'd be lighting.
So when you're coming off the train, that's the first thing that you're going to see is the lighting training down.
That's correct. Yeah.
Other than that, there's on the rest of the building, you won't see any lights because the curtains will all be drawn because there'll be somebody up there in their bathrobe, correct?
Well, we didn't get to that level of
Okay.
exterior lighting of the building in total. But.
Right. Thank you.
Tom?
Jeff, I have a question related to the driveway. If you could have the slide with the ivy showing on it. It's from the perspective of safety. Do you envision pedestrians walking down that driveway as perhaps a shortcut to Main Street, or residents that are living there going, for one reason or other, going to the parking lot?
I think no different than they do now. We're not doing anything that will entice people more to use that as a walkthrough. If people are using it now, they will probably use it in the future.
I guess where I was coming from was, are you building in a sidewalk anywhere there for pedestrians?
No, we're not.
And I guess that's a safety perspective of residents who live there. You are doing something different in that you're going to have 24 residents using that in and out with their cars.
Okay, sorry. What I didn't say was that in the lower level, all the residences, there's an elevator and stairs that connect the interior of the building to the basement. We don't expect people going out the front door, coming around, and they just connect vertically through the building. So we don't expect the tenants to be doing that.
And I was really thinking about pedestrians also as part of that. Okay.
We'll shift to, because everyone else covered anything I would have asked or commented on. We'll shift to the HPC. We have just one wireless? Is that? All right. So, Jeff, you have to give up your wireless mic. And if you can stand over by Peter's mic in case there's any questions to ask. We're on a tight budget here. It's year end. So.
There's money at work, huh?
Yep.
I think it's on.
Can you? Oh, good. You can hear me then, right?
Okay, Mary Ellen, thank you.
Yep. Jeff, I've seen you've done a lot of work on this and trying to incorporate some of the different architectural elements about town. I am concerned when I look at that building, there is no way that I would ever know that that was once the Madison Theater. Every other building that you've talked about, James, the YMCA, the Museum of Early Trade, they all, if you look at that building and even the places on Waverly and look at them, you say, okay, I understand that that was at one time used for this rather than its current use. But here you won't see any of that at all. And this, I think the theater is a key building in Madison in terms of it's at the northern part of the historic preservation section. And it's one of the few unusual buildings, along with James, the YMCA, and the Museum of Early Trades. So I'm at a loss as to why you think this building complies with historic preservation guidelines.
Because if you were to read the sections of the HPC, it clearly states that it is not the intention of the HPC to ask an applicant for a new building to emulate other existing buildings. And it actually says it, in fact, encourages people, or I'm sorry, it says it does not discourage new designs that would not be contemporary in design. That's specifically in the HPC guidelines. So we're actually doing exactly what the basic guidelines are not mandating us, but we're just following the guidelines.
But that's after other alternatives are eliminated. And you talked about the economics of it, but you still have the idea of what if you use the facade of the building and built behind it? Or what if you kept the canopy in the front and the opening and used that for the movie theater and the entranceway to the apartments? There are different options here. And to me, when I look at that building, and it doesn't go in terms of style with the rest of Madison.
We'll look at that, but honestly, it wasn't the attempt in this design to recreate, to build a new building or salvage a building that is in structurally disrepair. So we're not thinking to repair that building. You couldn't build on top of it. Structural engineers forbid us to build on top of it at this point. So to take down this building and build a new building to make it look like the old movie theater does not seem to be, in our viewpoint, how to sort of take Madison into a direction of a little bit more energy, invigoration, and it is changing Lincoln Place. That marquee, it is interesting, sort of. It gets knocked by trucks every other month, but regardless, it is a movie theater building. This building is not a movie theater building. So it would be peculiar to ask a designer to build a residential and retail building to make it look like an old movie theater. It wouldn't be like tying your hands behind your back and asking them to swim. It's a hard request.
Okay, who's...
Jeff, as you well know, the ordinance that created the HPC and defined the historic district of which the existing movie theater is the north side anchor of the district on Lincoln Place. The ordinance doesn't prohibit demolition. We know that. But it also certainly doesn't encourage it as well. And I'm reading from the ordinance, in regard to an application to demolish or move a historic building, site, place, or structure, the following matters should be considered. And then there's a list provided. One item on the list specifically asks the question, what are the compelling reasons for not retaining the existing structure? Can you elaborate somewhat on what are those significant structural issues? We've got a picture of the building when it was built, and it does have a steel skeleton. So can you spend a little time explaining to us what those compelling issues are?
I'm sorry, you're asking me what are the structural issues specifically?
The compelling reasons as to why you said disrepair. Why can't it be saved? What are those compelling reasons that say that? You mentioned that it was, the engineers said it wasn't structurally sound or something. Can you give us a little more information?
Yeah. Well, one that you could all go take a look at tomorrow morning. If you look on the east side of the building, you'll see a diagonal crack that starts in the foundation at the basement and goes right through the entire building, diagonally sort of towards Main Street, up through the... that's a clear indication of some foundation failure where part of the building below has given out and the building is now cracked right through it. So you'd have to underpin half the building on the one side just to stabilize it. I've been through, if you have to ask yourself why someone paints a brick building. I think, Carmen, you're the best one to talk about why you would never paint a brick building. Brick is a porous material, it breathes. It has a cavity inside that needs air infiltration. Once you paint a building, paint a brick on a building, it stops breathing. Any water, and you've been inside the building, you've seen a tremendous amount of water damage. It's sitting, I don't know if it's still sitting there, but it's been sitting there. It's probably mold inside the buildings. And that's why you see the brick spalling on the outside. You see a lot of that brick spalling as well, because it's just has no place to breathe. When the water freezes over the wintertime, it gets, ice is larger than the liquid. It starts cracking the brick. So when you paint the brick, it's so that you've decided, I'm not going to maintain the building anymore. throwing my hands up. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on it, make it look good. So if you've been through the building on the second and third floor, you'll see an old, decayed, decrepit building that you would not want to add anything on top of. It's just, engineers said, I have an engineering degree prior to architecture, so I concur wholeheartedly. The best thing to do is you build a structure outside of this structure and forget the existing structure and just build on top of it going up. That's enormously expensive. It's something you don't typically do.
Again, thank you, Jeff, for your great presentation, and wanted to also thank you for your many years of being on our Historic Preservation Commission and helping us understand some of the building elements. But I want to refer to our Madison's ordinance, and under Section 8 for demolition, the questions I'm going to ask you relate to Section B under criteria and item number 3, which says, its importance to the municipality and the extent to which its historical or architectural value is such that its removal would be detrimental to the public interest. That was number 3. And number 6 in that same section says, for us to question you on the probable impact of its removal upon the ambiance of the historic district. So, to that end, I don't want to go into the details of what some of the commission members brought up about the windows in the front facade, which provide some look and feel. And somebody referred to it as maybe like a factory that's been reconditioned, reused. And so to that end, I love the fact that you used brick and the canopy that brings some of those elements. But I think what that location needs is some kind of a signature element that says you have arrived in Madison. And I know you have a great deal of expertise and lots of experience in this area. So those are the elements maybe you should consider as you develop this project further.
Anyone else on? Okay. Pass it on back.
Jeff, thank you again. Wonderful presentation, very thorough analysis.
Yeah, keep that microphone close to the mouth.
Yes, sorry about that. So very, very nice, careful analysis of our town. Under one of the elements of the Historic Commission or designation is the criteria for designation. So throughout the district, the criteria are established by which things are designated. So one of them is that the building embody the distinctive characteristics of a type. So, I mean, the building may have some structural issues, whatever, but if we follow our ordinance, this building is the only type of this kind in the town, and that type is a movie theater. So that's one of the key elements to an historic district, and the reason for its designation is because it's a distinctive type of building. So I don't know if you've addressed that or spoken to that issue. The other one in that list of the criteria is the unique location or singular physical characteristics that make a district or site an established or familiar visual feature. Again, that's what this theater building is. I'll grant you, it's not a stellar piece of architecture, but it is a distinctive visual feature, and it creates a memorable image where it is. So I guess one of the questions would be, moving forward, how does the new building embody distinctive characteristics of a type? What type is it? Is it going to contribute to the historic district in that sense, in being a particular unique type of building? And then will it also be a building that has a very unique visual feature? So two thoughts from reading from the ordinance.
Thank you. You understand that this is a two-step process with the HPC. The first step is we rule or have an opinion when it becomes a formal application on the demolition. This, as has been said, this is a contributing building in our historic district, so it would be remiss on our part not to ask a lot of hard questions on why this building could be demolished and have no impact on the rest of the existing historic district. Step 2 is, if the building is demolished, the HPC then must be satisfied with the design of any new construction in the historic district. So we have a 2-step process to go through. We've asked some questions regarding the demolition, and I'm sure there will be further questions when this becomes a formal application. Regarding the potential new building, I have a couple questions about its relationship to other significant buildings in the historic district. One of them being the post office. There is a rendering that when you show the theater side entrance, it's a bit, I think, graphically imaginative that I'm not sure you can get this view as shown on the side because the post office is right next to it. This kind of suggests you have a 50-foot plaza to back up on. So I'm just concerned as we go forward looking at site analysis to make sure this new building with windows, not more, windows period, with a spatial relationship to a very significant building in the post office respects that and can step back and play nicely with the post office. The work that you did with the train station, fine. The train station is a bigger building. There have been some good comments, though, about the sort of the livability of this structure based on being directly across from the platform at the tracks. And when you spoke, I heard 2 things. One was you would try to reuse, and one you would recreate a Lions theater plaque. Could you clarify which one that is, and why, if we're creating a modern building, would you put a recreated or reused marker plaque in your parapet?
I can use this. It's okay. Well, the plaque is there, and we're just honoring the history of the building by reusing the plaque. We assumed that we could remove it carefully and place it into a new pediment with this building. That was the reason why we did it. It was just honoring what was there. With regard to the rendering, the post office is actually 20 feet from our building's face. It's 15 feet off of its side lot line, and we're 5 feet off in the other direction. So we placed the rendering just so the edge of that post office would not be seen at all, because if it was to be seen, you might as well see a whole lot of it, not just the edge of it. So we just cut it at that point. So that is an accurate perspective of it. Though maybe the gravel yard in front of the post office on the side is a little cleaned up, but other than that, it's accurate.
I'm sure there will be more conversation about design details as we go forward. Thank you very much for your presentation. Anybody else on HPC?
Yes, Karen. Say one thing. I think we do appreciate the fact that you're trying to use as much of the space as you can, too, so you can get more rental units in there, and that's understandable. The building design, though, when you look at it, and I guess we'll talk, as Janet said later, more about that, for the width or the bulk or whatever the correct term is of the building, I'm not an architect, obviously, it seems the building would even be taller. It's almost like the building is so big. It's such a... You come off the train station, and it looks like you're in South Orange or somewhere, or some other city. It doesn't look like Madison. And could there not be some creativity done to the front, the facade, to make it look not quite so imposing and so unlike what it was before? Maybe, to Mary Ellen's point, we can't just keep the front there and just put another building behind, but do something. So when it just strikes me personally, and I think a lot of people on the HPC feel the same, that it just changes the whole look and doesn't really give us the character we're looking for. That's what we're looking for, some character or something that would make it look more like Madison. Anybody else want to say something?
I just want to speak, Jeff, briefly to the interior. We're, as members of the commission, we're mainly concerned with the exterior, of course, and the massing. But we want it to be a successful building if it's going to be demolished and turned into a new structure. So what's the reality of those theaters actually being used? Is this a new sort of mini theater concept that's actually getting traction somewhere else? I mean, these look really small. And will they actually be able to ever be used? And in fact, in a couple of years, they'll just be turned into retail storage. So they don't seem maybe realistic. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could speak to that issue. And then the other thing that does seem apparent from the unit plans is that they're quite deep, especially the east-facing units. So the fairly narrow window exposure for a unit, especially the one-bedrooms, put a bedroom on a window and then a fairly narrow space for your living room, and the dining and kitchen are pulled way back into the darker portion of the unit. So it seems like some of the depths there are more than they need to be. Not to question the count necessarily, but the depth. So that might ease the massing of the upper portion of the building a little bit if it pulled in somewhat. I mean, it's your building, not mine, so you're going to figure that out. I know it's a lot of DD to do here. But so those are sort of interior issues that I was wondering if you could address.
You know, I went to the Roberts Cinema a few weeks ago to see LBJ, and it was on a Saturday night. Good movie. There were prime time, 8:30 start. There were 26 people in the theater. This was after the Madison theaters had closed down. Pretty sad, considering that's the only small theater in the area. The only thing it's competing against is Route 10 and East Hanover, right? So with these theaters of 40 seats and 42 seats, I just designed them based on a rough module of the comfortable seating. Actually, the Bowtie, who was a long time ago a client of mine, in fact, had told me that what they're doing with theaters, now they've even changed that model apparently, is that they would rather have movies that have 40 people show after show after show than one movie with 60 and the next movie with 12. It's a better business for them. But I'm not an expert on this. But the 40-seat theater is not an unusual size theater for the modern, comfortable theaters.
Yeah, just one more word on that. I mean, the feedback that my client has gotten in his discussions with many different operators is that's the best design and the best scale for attracting an operator in today's reality for that industry.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the HPC? Okay, thank you very much. So our next step will be comments or questions from the audience. And just a guideline reminder, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. You're going to come up to the lectern, state your name, your address, write the same on the clipboard. I will start the time then. Just wait a second, Sandy. Thank you. I know you've been waiting for this moment. But just wait a second. And be mindful of time. If someone says something you agree with, rather than repeat the whole thing, you can get up and say, ditto, or yes, I agree with what was just said. And we also are going to be mindful of everyone's bedtime, so if it does extend, we may not be able to get everyone's comments in here. Again, this is a concept hearing, trying to give the developers and architect feedback. So before you come up though, Sandy, we're going to treat this like it is holiday time. We're all about ready to travel, and we always have women, or men, I'm sorry, not women, parents with children board first. So if there are any parents that wanted to comment that have young children that need to get home and do their homework or get to bed, we will let them come up first, and then I will open it to others. Are there any parents with children that would like to speak first? Seeing none, Sandy, it looks like you want to go first. So.
Same as Borough. Sandy Kolikowski, Park Avenue, Madison. Thank you all for holding this meeting. keep my comments mostly to one aspect of the plan at hand. So putting aside the fact that this is the first time in the theater's 90-plus year history that it's been bought by someone who thinks that demolishing one of the most iconic buildings in Madison's historic downtown civic business district is appropriate, it's clear at least that the developer understands that an overwhelming number of residents are unhappy. So they've inserted 2 movie theaters, an olive branch, if you will, to the community. We had the approximate dimensions shared with us earlier reviewed by a successful movie operator to get their opinion on what's being offered. I'll read you what he wrote. Quote, both of these theaters would be known as micro cinemas. 14-foot ceilings will leave you with a tiny screen, about 11 feet. This is because the screen has to be about 5 feet off the floor. A theater should have a minimum 20-foot ceiling. The 27 by 40-foot theater has the right rectangular shape. A square 34 by 35 is too wide for its shallow depth. But of all these things, the height requirement is the most important. The person designing these spaces has no cinema experience. This is the type of thing you'd have in a multi-purpose school space or something similar. End quote. In closing, I'll make 3 points. 1, there are plenty of reasons to be cross about this proposal, including what could become a precedented assault on our historic downtown. 2, there's a lot to be baffled by, including why these talented professionals want to be saddled with such an unpopular project, and their need to use the steady refrain that movies have somehow become obsolete. Through the generous support of our neighbors, the Breckmans, we've been able to have someone research that, and we've learned the exact opposite is true. There are models that allow a neighborhood movie theater to thrive, many averaging over 100,000 tickets sold annually.
30 seconds.
In towns our size, and providing far-reaching benefits to surrounding businesses. Lastly, 3, the amusing factor in all this, a half-hearted attempt to address our overwhelming request to keep the movie theater by knocking in 2 small rooms in the back that no movie operator will be able to work with, and extending that as an olive branch. I hope my fellow residents won't be fooled by it, because it's just a stick. Olives and leaves aren't included.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please hold. For those that arrived late, we want to hold the applause, because if you're the speaker that doesn't get applause, it's just not right. So please hold it.
Carla DeSarno, Lakeview Avenue, Florham Park. My family's from Madison. Okay. First of all, I have a theatrical background. I have a degree in technical design, so I know about theaters. I just want to tell you the first theater I ever went to as a child was the Madison Theater. My parents, as a young couple, went to the Madison Theater, so the theater is close to my heart. The Historical Society must recognize the building is part of Madison's history and should be preserved. The Madison Theater should be saved since it adds to the culture of Madison. The movie theater is a place for children, families, for couples to go on a date, for the young, the old, and have the experience of seeing the latest movie. It gives the teenagers a place to go. How could it be taken away from this community? The theater just needs to be brought back, remodeled, maybe the facade. We can always take the asbestos out. Look what happened to Mayo Pack. I worked at that theater. It was dormant for 10 years. It was brought back, and look what it is today. So we can take that theater, we can get grants, we can buy back that theater and save from demolition and developers. The community here was saved. It really needs to be saved. Now, the Surflight, I'm going to go 3 minutes. Community theater was saved, as I just mentioned, okay? The Surflight Theater in Beach Haven recently went through a similar plight. The theater was going through a difficult time. They had a deficit, so Med bid on the property to build condos. But the resident fought back, and the Historical Society, because it was in a historical district, they got a new owner, they remodeled, and they bought it back for 2017 season. Recently in the news, Sag Harbor, Long Island had a fire. The movie theater burned down. The owner was not going to rebuild. So the community had a donor fund drive and a grant. And just 5 days ago in the New York Times, they announced they had enough money to rebuild their movie theater. The Baker Theater in Dover was saved from the wrecking ball. The great Jersey Theater, Lowe's Theater, is now being restored by donations and volunteers from the people. The Carlos Williams Center in Rutherford was having financial difficulties, structural problems, by the way. But with funding
30 seconds.
and remodeling, it was reopened again, and they upgraded their movie equipment. And I think a little micro movie theater is an insult to a theater. You must have at least 200 seats, if not 100. You can't have 40 seats. 240. That's not a movie theater. That is a home theater. Save Madison Theater.
Hold the applause, please. Thank you. Hold the applause. Just to make it easy, so we can just make a line if you want to speak. That way we can save time in between speakers. And if you change your mind, you can always sit down.
My name is Mark Hewitt, FAIA. I'm an architect and architecture historian. I've worked in Madison for probably 30 years. And I know the
address.
I'm from Bernardsville, 19 Mount Airy Road, Bernardsville, New Jersey. I practice also in Bernardsville. I want to just make 3 points. The first is a point about the cultural significance of this place in a small community like Madison. Movie theaters are, of course, in small towns throughout the country going out of business because the business model doesn't work very well. However, when you look at the history of the 20th century, movies were, of course, one of the major art forms of the last century, and they were also places where communities came together and where memories were made. And this community, like any community of its size, will have memories, lots and lots of people with memories back here, who will be affected by the loss of this building emotionally. It'll be a hurt for them. It won't matter whether there's a new theater in the building. It matters that this particular building is saved. So I think that you owe it to the town to, as our last speaker suggested, to look at reuse possibilities and look at perhaps public use possibilities for this building. Now, a private owner is not likely to do that. Private owner might be compelled to sell to a public entity, to a nonprofit, but that should be at least part of your due diligence on this. Should be look at what you could do to save the building. The building is not a structural loss. I can guarantee it. I've looked at the structural report. It certainly has some major structural problems, but as your architect said, if you had a nonprofit like the community, the theater in Morristown, I'm certain had worse problems than this building when it was renovated. Much worse problems than this building, and it took a lot of money to renovate it, but they did so. So, if there were a will, the structure of this building can be fixed. It can be reused. So that's point number 2. Number 3 is that. An architect who's working on a project like this, and I commend the architect for a wonderful presentation on the urban design aspects of this, I think is also compelled to do more homework on residential architecture of the town.
30 seconds.
Okay, and on the typology of those buildings. Apartment buildings in Madison have small windows. They are always of a sort of domestic type from the 1920s. There is no type that matches what he is putting up here. This is a bulky, awkward building, and it can't be anything else if it's designed this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please hold the applause. We'll give a chance at the very end that you can applaud all the speakers.
Good evening. Deborah Fennelly. I no longer live in Madison, but I have been here since 1962, and the environs, I have family still in town, and our mayor was once a neighbor of mine. I'd like to ditto all of the comments that have already been made. I was going to kind of bolster them. I am, among other things, a recent member of the Screen Actors Guild, very exciting at my age. I'm also a trained attorney, and I had the opportunity of being the clerk to the judge that used to hear all of the land use disputes on appeal for both Morris and Sussex counties. I'd like to offer both an artistic and an educational and a public interest reason for preserving this theater. There are very few towns like Madison that still have this anchor, and there are studies showing that a movie theater brings business and vitality. We also need to move towards the future and have multi-use buildings. We need to have structures that are close to the downtown area. But after listening to a presentation on the radio this morning about a regional plan that has been released, I'd like to offer the seed of interest, perhaps to the board, that a better use in the future may be the massive parking lots that we have in Madison, which apparently are the best place to consider building a structure with lots of housing that's near a train station, because usage of cars will go down and parking can be put below the buildings. The other thing I'd like to say is I remember being involved in the beginnings of the renovation of the Mayo Center. When I last went there, I believe in 1983, there were buckets catching the water as it poured. The movie I was watching was The Mission. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Through a group of dedicated friends of that theater, law firms and other businesses began to give money. Volunteers would show up on weekends and help do work. They opened it when it was not yet completed. There were seats next to you that were probably not great looking. But that theater has now become an arts center for the region. I'm going to share one more anecdotal story that will show you that despite the fact that in the recent history we think the theater has not been important. About a year ago, I was coming out of a movie, and a gentleman who had...
30 seconds.
All right. A gentleman who was commuting from his hotel in Morristown into New York was coming back, saw the theater and felt like a movie, got off, watched the movie, asked me about the town, and said the next time he came from Texas, he was going to stay in this town. Now, you can't beat that. So I'd like you to think forward-thinking, not just about needing housing in your downtown area, but about needing services and activities that can make Madison distinctive. Thank you.
Hold applause. Please hold.
Good evening, everyone. John Morris, Bedford Court. I, too, went to that theater as a child, and I pretty much stopped going there when they divvied it up and they changed the whole tenor of the building. I'm also president of the Chamber of Commerce here in town. I think we're living in a fascinating time because unlike when I was a kid and went to that theater, people want to live downtown now, and they want to live in beautiful buildings such as this design right here. Unfortunately, our beloved theater and the building itself is very old, and time has passed them by. You're talking about over 100 years. I think it's time to consider perhaps letting it go and taking advantage of this beautiful plan on this perfect site in the center of our town. I think this could be a marquee building, the way it's been designed for Madison. And I'm thinking if there is sort of initiative and a passion for some sort of a theater in this town, maybe something could be built on another site that's maybe smaller and more affordable. From what I've heard, to re-engineer this building would be a phenomenal expense. And maybe, as Jeff's plan shows, with the topography, the stories, the size, the shape, the ornamentation, the layout, It's well considered, and I think to have these folks come to Madison and consider this substantial investment is really a feather in all our caps, and I think we ought to consider it very, very seriously. And I'll share this information with the Chamber Board, and our goal has always been to support our patrons, whether they live in town or not. This is a landmark proposal, and I thank you all for making it.
Thank you. Please hold the applause.
Hi, Michael Kingman, Longview Avenue. I think we all need to ask ourselves, who is this for? Who is that building for? Is that for the Madison residents? Or is that for New York transplants that you're trying to pull in and your pocketbooks? This is about two things, really. Community benefit and aesthetic continuity. You talk about the movie theater as if its most important function was projecting movies. Turning this into an argument about the financial viability of movie theaters is a disingenuous straw man argument that is missing the point about community benefit. Also, you talk about these minor architectural details and the height of the building and the width of the building. When you're missing the forest for the trees, it is at best a bastardization of a Bauhaus design and at worst a Brooklyn warehouse. Who is this for? It doesn't seem like it's for us. Does this represent Madison? When people see this from the train, are they going to look at that building and get a good sense of what the rest of Madison is like? I don't think they are. That's all I have.
Thank you. Hold the applause again, please. Please hold the applause. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Bob Madera. I live on Wayne Boulevard. I've been in Madison about 3 years now. I'm not going to repeat some of the objections that were made about the design of the building. It might fit better somewhere else. I certainly don't think it fits in downtown Madison. Too many right angles, no arches, no grace. And I understand, I'm not an architect. I'm not criticizing your work at all. I hadn't thought of the problem you mentioned about the curtains, but you immediately reminded me of, what was it, opening day in, was it the Seattle Seahawks or the Toronto Blue Jays? You know what I'm talking about, right? I see you laughing. When they scanned the outfield, which actually the wall was part of a hotel, and the windows looked out on the field. And for a moment, that game became X-rated. And I'm just wondering how many people might be coming in on a train going further west and be somewhat shocked. But that's a possibility. One of the things I didn't hear considered was parking. I've been downtown a number of times in the last week and trying to go to the post office, and the parking was horrendous. Now, you have parking for 24 cars, right? Okay, how many one-car families exist anymore, right? So where do the other cars go? Where did the second car go? Where do the visitors' cars go? I didn't hear that addressed at all. It's if you go, just go out, go tomorrow. Go by the post office. I'm not talking about rush hour. And see how many cars are double parked or parked in front of the movie theater. I don't understand why it took so long to get input from the community. I mean, this thing's been going on for some time. You've done a lot of work, right? And now when everything seems to be all set up, I hear a lot of generalities. You mentioned a lot of local investors. I sure would like to see a list of investors in the project. Anybody else like to see a list of investors?
Please, No, we don't answer questions by audience, by
Okay. Well, let me make the request, and I don't expect you to answer it, but I would like to see a list published in the paper of who are the investors in the project. Let's know that, right? And we're at the point now where this is so far along that when one of the council members asked, I think Ms. Bailey, am I pronouncing that correctly? Bailey asked about complying with the order.
30 seconds.
Okay, the answer was that would be the end of the project. It couldn't be done. I don't know about you. I'm Irish. I don't react well to my way or the highway. Okay? I don't know what your intention was, but I don't react well to that. I don't know how many people do. So I think this thing needs to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just to clarification related to parking and traffic, as part of a formal application, they would have to address those issues. So you would see that if they came back to the formal application. Again, this is just a courtesy review, so they've heard you on that. Thank you.
Hi, Pippa Almond, 85 Ridgedale Avenue in Madison. I absolutely ditto the comments about the concerns over the glass and the windows, the modern design and the parking. I would just add regarding the modern design, which I think does not at all say Madison, look like Madison, or reflect who Madison or what Madison is. When friends come to visit Madison for the first time, it is the train station and Hartley Dodge that wow them. This could not be further architecturally from those landmarks. And certainly there are modern buildings which are lovely, and I am not against modern architecture in general. But given that you have, as you mentioned in the line of sight, Hartley Dodge and this amazing Gothic ornate train station, this sticks out like a sore thumb, and this is not what people expect, nor I think will admire about our town. So if the goal is to have an amazing building that draws people and attracts people and makes a statement echoing the lines and the beauty of the train station rather than casting them aside would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Sebastian Esposito, Woodland Road, Madison, New Jersey. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for the presentation. I moved here 5 years ago. Thought I was the only Esposito. I was quite surprised. We moved here from Brooklyn specifically because of the small town feel, and the theater certainly reinforces that. I just want to focus on a couple of concerns. Been great comments, certainly a lot of passion. But I'm wondering who you're marketing these units to and how that fits in with the character of the town. Are these single, newly married families? Because that's really the essence of what makes that part of Madison so unique. You can see families on a Sunday afternoon going to a matinee. You can see kids going at night. You can see families dropping in during the snow. And that's a unique part of Madison. And if we're going to subsidize housing, why not subsidize a theater? Right? So if you can have 4 units, why not use that to subsidize an actual theater? Just another thought. The last thing is really, what's it going to do to the architectural flow of the town? It is a bit industrial, maybe Le Corbusier design. I don't know if it really fits in with that kind of fabric and the warmth of that small town feel. Thank you.
Tom Harlan Putis, 27 Pomeroy Road. I'm really happy to see so many concerned residents, a lot of familiar faces. I don't know if any of you recognize me, but I have been in town for a few years now, since 1992. I would like to first disclose that I am one of the investors in the Saxon Group. So now at least you know one person on the list. I originally was a suitor trying to buy the movie theater building when I first heard that it went for sale, for many of the reasons that a lot of you have commented that it has
Tom,
a lot.
just direct the comments this way, so you can sit. Sorry.
I'm in the theater now, all right?
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
All right, I'll address it to you guys. So set the clock back. Give me 20 seconds. You interrupted me.
I'll give you. It's
all right, man.
You got your 20 seconds.
So what I was sensitive to was a lot of the things that have been commented on, losing the nostalgic opportunity to have a movie theater for myself, my family, for my neighbors. When we first moved here, Blockbuster was just starting out. There wasn't really a lot of options for us to watch movies. So now I could say for a fact, and it can be disputed, but it's definitely a fact that people don't attend movies the same way that they used to. Our children don't, and certainly the future children won't. We would like them to, but they probably won't. But I still wanted to save the theater building. So what I did was I went and started negotiating with the building owner. Norman Schoenfeld, the movie theater group, his partners. I met with the mayor. I met with Mr. Cody, with our planner, Mrs. Blakestein. I met with council people. A lot of people knew that I was trying to buy the theater, to keep it as a theater. I did a financial feasibility study. I did a structural engineering study on it. The building itself is very expensive to renovate. No matter what you're believing, besides the fact that it was valued on the tax roll around $1.7 million, once you start to do any renovation in that building, you're going to have to comply to a lot of codes. It's probably going to be another $1 million to $1.5 million. So my intention was to keep Bowtie there for a while and then figure out if there would be some other interest. And I have to say, and don't take this the wrong way, there was a lot of apathy about the future of the building up until we all realized it was sold to a developer. I didn't see a lot of people going to meetings and saying, Madison Borough Council, you need to save this theater because it's a theater and we have to have it. I felt that way, and I know a lot of our neighbors do too, but once you start to dig into it and you see what the cost is and really what the benefit is to the borough, it's hard to really make the dollars and cents work. And I never looked at the building for myself as a historic landmark.
30 seconds with your extra 20.
It's impossible.
Sorry, I know it's tough.
That
for you,
is like
Tom.
an atomic clock.
Yeah,
Okay, so fast forward. I made an offer to the movie theater owners based on what the revenue was, and the revenue was dying. I did a negotiation with Bowtie. They were going to stay for 2 years maximum. That was it. After that, who knows what would happen. Saxon bought the building. I heard about their concept, and I wanted to still keep a movie theater element in here. I heard objections to the type of theater. These are 14-foot ceilings. This wall could be a big movie screen. We could work together with this group and make something that would be more satisfying to the residents if you really want to have a movie theater in the borough, which I would like to also. Come on.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
This
Tom.
is important.
I've got to hold everyone to 3 minutes, Tom.
Can I have your time?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. I was going to state that at the beginning.
All right, I'll go to the back of the line.
And I know as a child I used to go to the double feature trying to get to the second movie free, but no, we can't do it.
I bet you worked it out a couple of times.
All
All right, thank you, Mayor.
I'm Justin, and I'm Cameron Morales, and we live on Overhill Drive. Okay, so if you wanted to change the purpose of the movie theater, I think that we should use a movie theater in another way to benefit our town and us. We live in a town that values music, art, culture, and etc. This gift that we have appeals to all ages, so we should share that gift. We should change the movie theater to a place where people have concerts, performances, and recitals. So we're going to change it to a live theater. Adults, teens, and children will enjoy this. This can make Madison feel more like a home with a theater and a kid-friendly town.
Also, it won't be fair if we have a movie theater from 90 years that's over 90 years old, and it is lovely, and it's a piece of Madison. And people, would you rather have someone come in and see a big building or a lovely movie theater that doesn't really look amazing, but it's a big piece of Madison? And I think we can buy it back with fundraisers, and we're a humongous community, more like a family.
Thank you. And for the record, yes, we do have an exception for the applauding the.
Tough act to follow, that's for sure. I'm happy to say I'm glad I'm on this side of that wall over there. Most of you know me up front. For those who don't, I am the outgoing chair of the Environmental Commission and the continuing chair of Sustainable Madison.
Okay, speak this direction, Stephen. Thank you.
Okay. The upcoming planning board meeting.
And you gave your title, but I don't think you gave your name and address. Sorry.
Steve Stocker, 136 Park Avenue.
All right.
The upcoming planning board meeting about this property will be an important decision. It will be as big a decision as becoming a borough in the first place, and the setting up of the water and the electric company as building the theater in the first place. This decision has to do with how the borough of Madison chooses to guide the redevelopment of our borough as to the housing density we wish to attain, and more importantly, where this redevelopment will be. Up to now, it has seemed, in my opinion, to be haphazard, as developers either bought small properties and built McMansions, or divided larger properties into smaller properties with McMansions on them. The decision to demolish the historic movie theater, a cornerstone of our historic district, and replace it with this apartment complex opens the door for the rest of the historic district to be torn down and replaced with more of these high-density buildings. You let one developer do this in the historic district, you must let the rest of the historic district owners and developers who buy up those properties do the same thing. Former Mayor Mary Anna Holden liked to say that you either plan to be someplace or you become any place USA. Is that who we want to be? I don't. At this moment, we have a population of 16,000 squeezed into 5 square miles. That equates to 3,700 people and 1,300 housing units per square mile. How dense do we want to be? Hoboken residents moving into this complex has been mentioned. Hoboken, 39,000 people, 21,000 housing units per square mile. Is that how dense we want to be, or are we somewhere in between that? Is that to be our new density? None of this appears to have been discussed, or if it has been discussed, at least I haven't been informed of it. Where will they park? What about the garbage?
30
the
seconds.
Sewage system hold all that toilet paper? What about the aquifer recharge and stormwater runoff? What will the economic impact to downtown be? These are just some of the questions that need your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold the applause. He's over 18, so we don't applaud. Sorry.
I better get an applause.
Hey, Bobby.
Bobby O'Donnell, 78 Britton Street. Mr. Mayor, before I start, first of all, I'm a fifth-generation Madison resident. You said something that you took the words pretty much right out of my mouth about sneaking into the second feature. When I was a little kid, my mother used to drop us off on Sundays, me and my cousins. We'd pile out of our station wagon, go in, sneak up to the balcony, and we had a great time. A lot of good memories at the movie theater. My kids had great memories at the movie theater. While I was driving here to this meeting, I looked in my rearview mirror, and back there was my father, my uncles, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. And we passed by 21 Green Village Road and looked out their back window of their house to that monstrosity that's there. Then I walked into this meeting, I looked over and I thought that was it. That was dwarfing the post office there. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather weren't too happy with the way things are going here in Madison. And, even for my kids, when I grew up here, what are we doing here? What is this town turning into? From when you went to Green Village Road School, right? Remember sleigh riding down that hill? Look at the memories we have now. But I can't even drive past there because I just feel like I'm going down a dark alley between two walls. Are we going to continue this? And is that the same monstrosity that is on Kings Road? I can't, again, fifth generation here. My kids want to live here. Where is everybody going to park? People can't even go into the businesses downtown because we have no parking. Now we have more people on top of people. And whatever, how many seconds do I have left here?
A little over 30.
I had a little more to say, but again, can I speak for my father right now? Because it wouldn't be
in
too
30
nice.
seconds, yes.
Anyways, thank you for your time, and I really hope you reconsider that. I mean, we could do something with that building. It's just saved the character of Madison. It's just turning into, it's looking like Montclair every time I turn around. Thank you.
Hold the applause, please.
Thank you for letting us talk to you. So when I look at that building, it looks like something I'd see on Route 10. It looks like something I'd see in the built-up portions of Montclair. Madison's getting more and more built up, and it's looking less and less like the historic Madison that we all know and love. And the loss of Green Village Road School to that monstrosity, and the loss of the sledding hill that I have memories sledding down when I was a kid is very disappointing. And I think that we should really look at whether or not this theater could become just a multi-purpose space or something like that, a performing arts center, because there's a lot of talent in Madison. There's a lot of theater groups in Madison. There's all these different people who would love to have a space downtown where they could do things with. And it's right across the street from the train station. You go on New Jersey Transit to New York, you don't see a single town that looks like ours. You don't see a single train station that looks like ours. We have a really special train station. We have a really special town, and you look out and you would see that building. It would just be very disappointing, and it wouldn't be Madison. It just really wouldn't be Madison. But anyway, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Name. Oh, yeah, sorry. Henry Pratt, 25 Sherwood Avenue.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Talmadge, 8 Ross Court, and I've been a member or a resident of Madison for 26 years, raised 5 kids here, so I've seen a lot of movies in that movie theater. Let me say first, I have 0 experience in training in design and architecture, so I'm going to refrain from commenting on the proposal. I'll leave that to others, although it does seem imposing to me. I'm concerned about the density, 24 units, apartment units, only 24 parking places, and I look at that juxtaposed to the word monstrosity has been used twice now in the last 10 minutes at the foot of Kings Road, and since I live just up the hill, I think that's a great description, and I'm surprised that it's there. All that having been said, I think there's a difference between old and historic. I don't see much historic about this movie theater. I think the phrase used by one of the
developer group was that it has sentimental historic value, and I think that's about it. There's nothing striking about the architecture. What I see is a dilapidated building. Somebody mentioned it's the anchor of the historic district. Well, the anchor pulls everything down to the bottom. And you have an abandoned movie theater that's out of business because they can't make the business go. And our wishes and dreams and hopes that a movie theater is going to come back and it's going to be successful and where someone's going to come in and run it, I think are just that, wishes and dreams. The idea that we should have, let's use it for a public use. Well, who's going to pay for it? And is that the right spot for it in the heart of that business area? I don't think so, but I see no reason that the building shouldn't be demolished in something more suitable. And I'm not saying this is it. I'm pretty sure that's probably not it. But I don't see this movie theater as being something that needs to be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold the applause, please.
My name is Roger Mayerson. I grew up in this town. I live in Morristown now, but I grew up at 35 Knollwood Avenue. Went to Central Avenue School. I remember going to that Madison Theater and paying 50 cents. And they actually had a doorman there that dressed up in a suit and tie. But be that as it may, I graduated from Madison High School. I was drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War, came back, married, bought a house on 30 Sherwood Avenue, and raised 2 kids here. And my family had a business in Madison. Some of you might remember it, D. Hart Pharmacy. It was in the family for 70 years. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, we lost our business, as many businesses in Madison were lost beyond their control. All I can say to you Madisonians is take control and some way, find a way to preserve this building because it is a beautiful part of the history of Madison. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tony Mazzacca. I live at 255 Main Street, apartment E1. Some of you in this room might be familiar with my family. I grew up here in town. My dad was the head custodian at the junior high school for many, many, many years. You all might remember him. His name was Curly, his nickname. And many of you guys played softball and attempted to hit our house all the time. We lived in a small house right behind the school. Many a softball landed on our roof and scared the living bejesus out of my mom, who never got used to it. Anyway, my brother Joe, you all might be familiar with him as well. He served the town of Madison. He was the borough attorney for about 20 years. Before that, he was on the planning board and the Board of Adjustment, I believe. I remember going to the theater, and I echo a lot of, when I was a little boy, and I echo a lot of the sentiments and the feelings about it. I'd like to see it preserved. This is a nice-looking building, perhaps, but not for here, and not across the street from that train station. I want a couple comments I want to make. I sell on eBay, and I'm at the post office nearly every day. There's one handicap space. It's on the western side of the, eastern side of the post office, in between where this proposed building is going to go. And I was concerned with the safety, like some people mentioned before. When I pull in that space to back out, I have a very difficult time. Is there going to be parking in front of the building for the retail stores? I have a very difficult time backing out in the handicap space, as probably other people do as well. It's just a difficult situation. So that is a concern. My other comment is, I had some customers from Paris, France, that came over to visit the United States. The first time in the United States were in New York City. They wanted to come out and visit me. So I told them, come out on the train right into town. I met them. I did a walking tour of the town with them. They just couldn't, from Paris, France, they could not believe this town and the buildings we have in this town. And the Hartley Dodge Memorial and the train station, even in Paris, France, they don't have things like this, okay? You know, so they were very impressed. They they loved the town. I drove him around. He worked for MetLife in Europe, so I drove him up to the Jets facility. We talked about the MetLife Stadium, but we couldn't get into the Jets facility without a pass. But anyway, it was. And I also
30 seconds.
So I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but if we could preserve the building, I don't know. Maybe it's not feasible, but I would like to see something else besides that building. Or if that building is going to be put there, why not? Why can't it look like similar to the building we used to have there, the theater, or the building that's there? It could look like that. It doesn't fit in, like a lot of people are saying, with the rest of the architecture in this town. And I grew up here, and I love this town. And Bob is giving me the timeout, so I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. And for the record, my teammates hit your house, but I never came close.
Hello, my name is Lonnie Spingarn. I live at Madison Common at 150 Leeds Court. I moved into this town 32 years ago just to hang my hat, and then we were going to buy something. Well, I'm still in the same townhouse, and this is a beautiful town. And I understand, I think the architect tried, and he did a beautiful job. And I think it is a good idea to have more housing in this town. But I agree with everyone. This town is charming. This is a beautiful building, but it just has to be revised, whatever you say, like more traditional, more like curved windows or bow windows, something, I can't explain it, but with some columns, something that would fit more into Madison, New Jersey. And a movie theater, it's very tough. I would come down on every Tuesday and I just see what happens here. It's very tough. I mean, if somebody wants to donate a fortune to help us get a movie theater, that's a different story. And I understand what the architect is saying. When you renovate an old building, it's going to just cost you. I mean, everyone is in business for something. I mean, but I also think that we should let people in Madison, like let's say I live in Madison Common and I want to stay in the town. I think we should keep our people first to move in the town than get outsiders. And that's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Larry Wickman, 33 Walnut Street. I haven't. It's really neat to be in a town that has a theater in it. As I drive through America and visit small towns, I always stop at the towns and I'm amazed by theaters still in towns. It's just not something you see anymore, and I really think it's something you should pursue. Someone echoed earlier that it should maybe be a responsibility of the council to follow a second path and come forward to the town with an option here to what it will realistically cost. To restore a movie theater in an age where movie theaters are dying is not a great thing, but I do think the town needs a dollar sign behind this as to what it truly costs to fix the interior and to refurbish it. Now, I hadn't been to the theater. I've lived in Madison for 20 years now, and I haven't been to the theater in over 15 years probably. And the reason for that is the theaters out on Route 10 are much better. You can get better seats, you can sit there, and you weren't cramped into a tiny little space. So as the bigger theaters went up, we started driving to the theater instead of walking to the center of town. And I argue or kind of don't agree with the fact that someone said moving it out and putting this in will benefit the local businesses. A theater is going to benefit the local businesses. You're going to go out for a dinner and a show. You're going to be able to walk to town and be able to take advantage of that. Right now, we're going out of town. So losing a movie theater is going to be a detriment. If we could restore one, it's going to bring a boon to the restaurants and the businesses in the area. There's no doubt about that. A movie theater right on the train line, that's a no-brainer. Now, I think the movie theater had its problems. It's a dicey situation there. But I'll drive 120 miles, 25 miles north of Philadelphia to visit an old theater there that runs on December 30th. They're running Mad World. Over the summer, they run The Blob. They shut down the street and they run a street fair. And that theater is called the Colonial Theater, Phoenixville. I have a nephew that lives in the town. Breweries have started moving to the town. And the town is going through revitalization. Huge housing is going in now into a town that was 25 miles north of, in a very similar situation to us. Now, their secret is it's a huge movie theater, hundreds of seats in there, and they're showing classic films. No one wants to go to a tiny little theater like what we had to sit through and see a movie on a reduced size screen. No one's want to go to those 15-foot screens either. So there is some possibility here to restore
30 seconds.
A success story for the town. Really hoping the board will come up with a real solution for what the town needs to do to get behind this project if we pursue a building. If we restore the theater, we can always add housing later. If it doesn't work out, yeah, we tried, but we can never undo taking down the theater. That is something that will be gone forever, and we should at least get the town behind this and see really, if we want to take a risky dice roll like this, what is it going to cost the town? Last point, the theater may not be the star on the top of our Christmas tree here. It's one of the ornaments we probably hang a little down, but that building there is one of those ornaments we'd put around towards the back of the tree. Thank you.
Hold the applause.
Hi. Sorry. My name is Kristen Caldor. I live at 1 Douglas Avenue. I've been in Madison now for 8 years. We moved here from a town just south of here, and we wanted to come to Madison because of the great community and the great feeling that we have in this town. It's a great walking town. It's just a wonderful sense of community and enjoyment, and the theater is very much a part of that. But I also want to speak to you as the mom of 2 kids, because I think that's been a little missing this evening. I have 2 kids who are now finally old enough to ride their bikes into town on their own. They can walk home or walk into town from school, and they come downtown with their friends, and it's a very safe community. And I love the fact that our kids have a place to go downtown into the movie theater. My children do watch movies. I just drove 8 boys to Star Wars on Friday, and we had to go to Morristown to see it, which is fine, but Morristown is not easy to drop kids off. It's not easy to find parking. There are just many reasons why it's just so nice to be able to have a theater here in town. So I would echo what Tom/investor said. I understand that the building's already been purchased, and it's been purchased for financial reasons. So I would like to see us work with the builders to keep a theater in that building, something that would work for the community, for our children, so that our kids do have a place to go, grab ice cream at McCool's, go to a movie, go for a slice of pizza at Romanelli's, and keep that sense of community downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold the applause.
Hi, Melanie Tomaszewski, 171 Main Street, and I know you're all worried that I'm going to go over 3 minutes the minute I stood up. I think everyone needs to kind of decide what is important. I know that sounds silly because we're talking about something sentimental. I own a few businesses in town. I've been in this town for 17 years, and we're not knocking down the James Street building. We're not knocking down the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. We're knocking down a building that wasn't bringing us much business to our town. January 2016, we had about 10 businesses closed in this town. What an uproar on Facebook. Oh my God, I can't believe they all closed. And now we are at full occupancy, and we're waiting for more new people to come to our town to shop in our stores. When I'm located at 6 Main Street. It's a really ugly building, guys. Chipotle? Yeah. I'm sure when that was being built, someone went, oh, it's not historic. But it's there, and we all kind of ignore that it's there. Is this big? It's big. I personally think it's really nice, but I'm from New York. I totally respect the O'Donnells and the Connollys and all the people who I watch. You guys are watching this town change. I get it. But if you want all of these new viable businesses to succeed, we do need new money in this town. We do need foot traffic. Foot traffic does not mean more cars. It means people who want to walk out of their door and go shopping. The people who walk up and down Main Street every day and shop are the people that I all know by face because they live above Alfred's. They live above Bagel Chateau. They live above all of the other buildings. We're not losing a building that was bringing us any money. If it was making them money and if it was making our town money, Bowtie would have kept it. The bottom line is all that really matters. I know that we want to be sentimental, and I love this town. Didn't think I was ever going to end up here. I hang out with the mayor. Like, that's cool. But at the same time, things are going to change. I'm from the Bronx. You think where I grew up looks like what it was? I believe a movie theater is viable. Boonton has an awesome old school movie theater. There are other spaces in this town where a movie theater can go, which we can discuss once we get people to move stuff around. But to have it right in town, it wasn't helping us, guys. I have a 10-year-old. We go to Morristown. We go to AMC. When I was in one of those seats, Madison never saw me again. And, I'm just trying to, everyone's so upset when businesses close. They close because not all you guys are walking up and down the streets. There is parking, maybe just not in front of the store you want to go to at that minute. But there is not a parking problem in this town, sorry. There's plenty of spots, you just got to walk a little. That's all. Look at that. Ha!
You did it under 3 minutes, Melanie.
I didn't finish this because I would have gotten distracted.
Hi, I'm Jean Schur. I live at 32 Kitchell Road, and I just want to end on a note of keeping a theater in the town. Like Kristen said, I also have 2 kids, and I just want to confirm what she said. And also, kind of going against what Mel just said, it's important to keep the kids in the town because then we're all in town. Rather than driving to Morristown or East Hanover, then we're going to go to dinner in East Hanover or Morristown. Isn't the idea to stay in Madison, go to dinner in Madison, pick up the kids from the movie in Madison, and stay in Madison? So I think we're really going against ourselves by not giving more emphasis to keeping a theater in town. And also, I want to make a point where we're building so much around here. Hundreds of new families are going to be moving in on Green Village. Hundreds of new families are going to be moving in on Park Avenue, Columbia Turnpike. Now I understand St. Elizabeth is going to be building 129 new units in St. Elizabeth. We're going to have hundreds and hundreds of new families of cars coming into Madison. Do we need more housing in downtown Madison? And maybe the theater will do better now because we're going to have hundreds of people living in Madison. So maybe the theater will do better. And I just want to say in terms of the building, I'm not crazy about the building, but I want to say one thing. The patios in the front, I think, are a really bad idea because people that don't have yards, they put their bicycles on the patio, they put their kids' stuff in the patio, they put all the junk on the patio, and then the people driving, the people on the train are going to see all this stuff on the patio. So I think patios are a bad idea facing the street. Thank you.
Thank you. As we're approaching 10, I think this will probably be our last comment. Oh, the pen.
I'm Marion Harris. I'm the chairman of the Morris County Trust for Historic.
I think move the microphone closer there.
I was trying not to make it rustle. Will that work? Good compromise. I'm the chairman of the Morris County Trust for Historic Preservation, which is not part of the county government. And
You need to get right on the microphone, please.
Like that?
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, that's reverberations. And I was the chair of the Morristown Historic Preservation Commission, for more than 20 years. So I'm impressed with your crowd. They're doing a great job. What I want to say is that Madison has, yes, not a collection of spectacular architecture, but a very solid set of historic assets that are community assets. They belong to the town. They are not just ordinary pieces of real estate, but they are public trust assets. And if anybody is going to take care of those assets, it has to be those of you who are operating the public entity. So what you have to think about is that this is in your hands, because the tools for saving your historic buildings, whether or not they're spectacular, are right here with you now. Your master plan is crawling with recommendations for saving the historic buildings. You have an established Historic Preservation Commission, and they obviously know very, very well what they're doing. They know what questions to ask. Your community is behind historic preservation. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear some people on the public board bring up issues like the massing in the design and the windows in the design. Those are spot-on comments, and we can't get our community to deal with design at that level at all, let alone a more professional level. So you've got everything here now that could actually save your historic assets. And what you could do, if you have to demolish this building, maybe that will be the version that you throw to the dragons, and maybe that will show you that you need more strength in your historic preservation protections. You've got an advisory commission now. What you need is a regulatory commission who can say, no, that cannot happen. And you have a knowledgeable enough commission so that they could handle it. I don't think you would be sorry. And I think your community would understand what you were doing. So I hope that in the worst possible case, this will give you a chance to think about that kind of development in town.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Mayor Woody. Okay, one last.
Woody Kirkeslager, 60 Prospect Street, Madison. And you could save a lot of time if you just let us make our name and address out ahead of time and just put it down, especially with Kirkeslager. The first thing I'd like to do is thank all the volunteers sitting around these tables. The HPC, the planning board, the council, none of them are paid. They're all doing volunteer work, and they're all knowledgeable, and I appreciate the compliments we got from another town. I want to just reiterate in closing that we're exactly where we were months ago when we brought the plea to the council to ask for funding to acquire the building and put it to public use. We're pretty much at the same place. We have a proposal. I have seen the proposal, and I respect that, and I think it's a good building, apartment building, mixed-use building. It would be better placed in town outside of the historic district if we could find another place for it. I know that's a hypothetical that is not likely to happen. But I think we either do, I never heard that saying before, throw the virgin into the dungeon? Or I hope we don't do that. I hope we don't allow the theater to disappear as a theater. The building itself is not beautiful, inside or outside, but it's not the building's fault, and it's not the only building in Madison that's run down and could be improved. And if we want to start a program on that, I would gladly champion that initiative to take some of our buildings that need to be improved in the business district and clean them up, and we will get better businesses, John, that way than allowing this building to A theater is a key element of a town. We have a theater. We did have a theater.
30 seconds.
And it is critical to our town, to our culture, obviously to the lives of many of the people here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's James Gilbert, and I'm from the greater Madison metropolitan area. I live in Chatham Township, and I wrote down my thoughts because at my age, you got to be careful about forgetting all of them. But I'm going to mention at the outset a little bit about my experience as a life, so it will put into context what I'm going to say at the end. I started out on Wall Street as a municipal bond analyst. I spent a long career in municipal finance and in underwriting. And on the civic side, I got involved in planning. I was chairman of the Englewood Planning Board, and then president of New Jersey Federation of Planning Officials, and chairman of the New Jersey State Planning Commission, and I was on the advisory council for the Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers for many years. I might also mention that I was on the board of the Community Theater and the Mayo for about 13 years. What I want to say is that this is an exceptional town. I see towns all the time and downtowns, and it's a great place. The key to it, of course, is that it's on a commuter line to one of the great cities of the world. And part of its attraction is its downtown district, its walkability. And part of the vitality in that is your theater. I've heard the various comments about the economics of that. But I do think that you need a theater downtown, a cinema, and a viable one. It doesn't strike me that these two small spaces are really going to do that job. So what I want to point out to you and suggest to you as a possibility is to think about the use of eminent domain and condemnation of this property. And if it doesn't work out, you can sell it. The condemnation procedures are used fairly often in this state. You have the price has been established recently, so you could work with that. So that's a suggestion, and to put that suggestion into a little bit of context, I'd just like to recall, you may recall our President George Herbert Walker Bush talking one time about the vision thing. And I know all of you put in a lot of time, and it's quality time, and I have great respect for all of you. But I think what I'm suggesting to you is reach for it. And in terms of reaching for it and how big a job it would be,
30 seconds.
I just want to say that Madison is one of only 19 towns out of 567 in the state of New Jersey that runs an electric distribution system. And if you can do that, you can do the theater too.
Thank you. All right, at this moment, I want to thank all those that had the courage to get up and speak. I want to thank all those that came out tonight, 5 nights away from Christmas. And so this is not an easy time of year, but yet you came out and showed your passion and support for this town. And no matter what side of the issue is, it's very important that you shared your thoughts. Again, this was a concept hearing. I think we gave the developers some thoughts to work with. And as I said at the beginning, there is nothing until there's a formal application, and you'll be hearing from that. So with that, can we have a motion from both boards to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy holidays to all. Thank you.
Well, next year.
Do it.
That's the right place to put it.
Take
care. Happy holidays.
It's not me.
It's an incredible portrait again of this town. All these different characters.
I need it.
This is amazing, really.
That was
here, you can walk to it, it's great. I'm a producer and director.